Hey Kbiomech, just wanted to thank you for the video response. I was thinking that if I get a response, it would be just a text one. So seeing a video response was just really surprising, and I thank you for that. Not only was it a pleasant surprise, but you also came with some really good points as well, which I thoroughly found interesting. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm pretty sure you've already noticed I've subscribed to your channel, and yours is the one of the few channels that I really look forward to seeing something new, because I think your views on anarchy and politics in general are very interesting. There's some views I can't say I 100% agree with, but I still find them like something for me to think about, something for me to analyze. And I thank you for that, because as long as I have something engaging, intelligent conversation, intelligent discussion, I just find that just an incredible thing to encounter, especially in these days and times in this country. But enough of that. Let me just get on to my thing. I just want to comment on 3 points that you brought up, which I didn't think about, and I'm glad you brought them up because it got me thinking, and it was just something that I think I should have been thinking about. First one was something you caught me on. It was my comment on how Americans should be noticing these markers about the fall of the empire, because if they'd ever, if they should have taken a history class, they'd know. But you reminded me that education isn't all it's cracked up to be in this country. I should have known better. Thanks for the reminder. But with that being said, I wanted to point out that my education was different than the average Americans, I guess. I went through from kindergarten on to 8th. I was in Catholic school, and then the next 4 years of high school, I actually went to a specialized high school. So I guess I got a leg up on the average American citizen as far as education goes. A bit of an advantage. Though I have to point out, at least from my own experience, that the education in these systems can be skewed too. I know that when I went to Catholic school, American history tended to be skewed and dumbed down. And science, definitely in a religious school, they tend to downplay a few things here and there. But at least in my case, I was lucky. They still pointed out a couple of things that made me go, wait a minute, that makes no sense according to your religion doesn't make sense according to what I learned in science. But that's a rant for another time. But yeah, definitely American history in particular, even in private schools, as far as the experience I've had, they can F people over. Like you've pointed out in the Civil War, most people think that was fought over slavery. And the real reason was because of the economic pressure that the North was putting on the South. Many Northerners didn't give, excuse my language, didn't give two shits about the slaves down there, especially Lincoln. I knew from 4th grade on that Lincoln was a bastard. That he really didn't care at all about black people of this country, and that the Emancipation Proclamation that he did write was simply a tool just to try to hurt the South further. It was just another little war tool, but it never really, like you pointed out, it had no real teeth, because by then they had seceded. The reason why the war was fought was to drag them back into the country again. So I guess it was a semantic sort of thing. Even the Revolutionary War was fought over pretenses that, there were ideals in place. It's not like Thomas Paine did not write the things that he wrote, but there were other more critical underlying factors that had to do with that war being fought that's never taught in schools. And it's a shame, because it might wake people up to why this country is run the way it is. For anyone else who is watching this and thinking I'm nuts by saying that the war wasn't fought over the whole taxation without representation and being free men, well, first let me quote the late George Carlin and reminding you guys that this country was founded by a bunch of slave owners who wrote down later on that all men are created equal. Just let that stew in your noodle for a bit. And rather than me shoving this down your throat, why don't you guys look in your libraries or look online on the following things that the British had asked, the things that caused the Revolutionary War, the things that pissed off the wealthy in the U.S. colonies. They were told to stop taking more Indian land. Remember, the major reason why Britain started putting all these taxes and things is they just fought 2 major wars. The 7-Year War, French-Indian War and all that. And they had money to recoup. War is expensive, as we are finding out right now with this fraudulent war we got right now. So they needed to find some way of getting money from the colonies and cut down on expenses. Remember, the colonies were still British territory. So they told the colonists 4 major things. Just look this up. Don't take my word for it. Look up and research the following 4 things. Settlers were told to stop taking more Indian land, to cut down on the defense costs of protecting the lands that they stole from the Indians. The settlers were told to stop killing the Indians. to not, to stop murdering them and killing them so that you can cut in on the fur trades and the tobacco trades and pushing them further and further back. They were told to cut down on the corruption going on over there, the smuggling and bribery that was going on with the ports of all the ships and goods coming in. And they were told to introduce a new tax system that would help with their debt burden. Look up those 4 points. Don't take my word for it, but just look up those 4 points. And then talk to me about this whole thing of the ideals of how America was founded. Again, don't take my word for it, but do some freaking history. Do some research, all right? Those type of things I knew about from 3rd grade on, even though that was not taught in school. Because I was lucky. Again, my parents taught me how to read before I even reached kindergarten. I had a love for reading by the time I was in 2nd grade. My parents loved telling a story about how I used to go to the classroom library, and just simply take the books and go home with them, to the point where later on my father had to give back 5 garbage bags worth of books that I just simply took and kept reading. But I had a love for reading, and when I was in 3rd grade up, I started reading books beyond the textbooks that pointed out things that just did not add up to what they were teaching me. So right away I knew there was BS going on. My parents taught me to question everything I was taught, everything I read, everything I was exposed to. Which, again, I was lucky with. The way I was raised was different from the way an American was raised, but that's probably because my parents were immigrants. My parents were Haitian immigrants. So I wasn't indoctrinated with American BS. And plus, my parents came from a repressive regime, so they knew tyranny and BS when they saw it. So I was lucky. That's probably why my views are a bit different than the average American's. But that's just touching on the education point that you pointed out. Again, it just goes to show that the average public citizen, the average public school student, isn't exposed to these sort of things. But I don't think the private student is either. I mean, they have. I've read these books in the school library, but they certainly weren't being taught. You had to go out and look for them for yourself. That being said, I think even in the worst public school, if a student, I mean, they're taught only to memorize the garbage they're given, so they're not taught to think critically. But if they read between the lines, they might be able to spot this stuff. I've already gone on a little bit too long on just this one point. There were 2 others that I should try to quickly mention before my 10-minute thing is over. You touched on family breakdown as being one of the markers. And I never noticed that. I should have. That's an interesting point, and I should have seen that marker. I've noticed the breakdown of the family, but linking it to how the country falls apart, that's an apt point. I should have seen that. I got some more reading to do. Thanks for pointing that out. But as far as the family breakdown goes, when you mentioned that, something jogged in my head. I think the breakdown of the family goes down way further than people might think. Because most people, when they think of the family in this country, they think of the so-called nuclear family. You know, mother, father, 2 kids, and a dog. That's actually a fairly recent phenomenon. That didn't start popping up until around the 50s or so. Before that, and especially if you look around the world, the image of the family is an extended one. It's a bigger one. I forgot the exact term for it, but you got the mother, you got the father, you got the kids, but then you got the grandparents, you got the uncles, you got the nieces and nephews, and they're all one unit. These days we consider all these things separate. You got your nuclear family, and then you got the grandparents outside of it, and the uncles outside of it, and they supposedly don't play that much of a part in the upbringing of the children or the upbringing of the family itself. You visit them on occasion, but you're still seen as a separate entity. But back then that wasn't so. It was like a mini clan. I mean, you pointed out yourself that the family is considered the first micro-unit, political micro-unit. They're their own culture. They have their own rules, their own laws, their own way of viewing things. And they're kind of like their own mini clan. You know, you have like, there was many instances where they all lived with each other. The grandparents lived in the same house. The uncles might live nearby or in the same area. And they all helped raise each other and supported each other financially, spiritually, mentally, and all that. And that was the major foundation that you grew up in. But with the nuclear family, there was a breaking down of that, a splitting apart of those values. Where, all right, you're on your own. You know, you raise your own kids, you're on your own. We're over here, we're separate. And that's definitely the prevalent view today. And it's not that much of a far cry from separating that to later on even breaking the mother and father apart and having the mother just the BS that, oh, you can raise the kids but on your own. But then later on, the mother needs to get support from the father, which breaks him down financially. And then the mother might be forced to go on welfare, which leads to your next point, which I want to talk about, which is absolutely true. Once you enter welfare, you're a slave. So how is this strengthening families? It's a cultural thing as well as a government thing. Government does it subtly, by introducing all these programs which help it along. But culturally, it's really pushed into these points. I ran out of time again. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the welfare thing. Maybe I will in another vid. But yeah, those were really interesting points you put it on, and I agree with them wholeheartedly. I look forward to any more videos you put up because I really find them interesting. I share them with my friends. I think about a lot of what you say, and you tend to make me go out and read more stuff to see the viewpoints you did. So I thank you a lot for that. And well, I'll catch you later. Thanks.